Anderson Pack and the Free Nationals and Thundercat. Marley Park, Dublin, June 29th. Tickets from $89.50 on sale this Friday at 10 a.m. Additional charges may apply, subject to license. Check more at redhotchilipeppers.com.
Here's to convincing your fella to get a dog on a rainy Friday afternoon. And here's to him falling in love with it by Sunday morning. This October, support your local and let's finally celebrate your moments, big and small, from the last 18 months. Guinness. Here's to it all. Get the facts. Be drink aware. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Better value lives at Dunnes Stores with big savings on hundreds of your favourite brands. Mix and match any 5 for just €5 across treats like Kit Kat and Toffee Crisp snack size multi-packs, plus Dairy Milk Little Bars and Cadbury Freddo multi-packs, as well as snack time favourites like 6 packs of Meanies and Chickadees or the thirst quenching My Waddy 1 litre range. That's any 5 for just €5. Plus, with our 10 off 50 grocery voucher, you save even more. Dunnes Stores, always better value. Terms and conditions apply. Voucher can be used on next grocery shop of €50 or more.
At Harvey Norman, our cooking specialist staff are here to help you find the perfect appliances for your kitchen. Like the AEG self-cleaning oven with built-in recipe collection, which allows you to precisely prepare any meal with ease. Save €140, now $999. Or the AEG induction hob with power boost function, which gives an instant burst of heat that can boil water in under 90 seconds. Now €449. Shop online at harveynorman.ie or in our spacious stores. Harvey Norman, your cooking specialists.
Go! You ain't shit! I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
Well, fans can be the harshest critics, you know.
And they often are.
A wife is often the harshest critic of her husband.
I thought I was invincible. That's what you're trained to believe as a sports person.
There was 4 million people in Ireland who knew much more about managing football teams than I did. When it comes to music, I can spoof with the best.
Your sporting career is the best time you'll have, and you know you have to hang on to it for as long as you like, because everything else is pretty crappy.
And this is not lies. Stephen Rothschild has never spoken to Jim McGuinness in his life.
All right, good afternoon, and you're very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. Shane Hannon with you until 5 p.m. this evening. It's time for the Saturday panel, one for the motorsport enthusiasts today as well, and it's an Indy racing special with 2 guys, I think it's fair to say, in different generations of their careers, you could say, perhaps. First off, it's Willy T Ribbs, motorsport legend, of course, and the focus of the Netflix film, documentary film, Uppity, the Willy T Ribbs Story. And if you haven't seen that documentary, I would urge you to watch it. It's an incredible look at Willy T Ribbs' incredible career and life that he's had so far. And our other guest this afternoon is James Rowe, an Irish driver over in Indianapolis. He's just finished his rookie season in Indy Pro 2000, where he finished with a season-ending win in Mid-Ohio. Afternoon to you both, lads.
Hey, Shane, how are you?
Keeping well.
Hey, you guys are already at the bar over there, right?
It's 1:30 over here Irish time, so we're close enough, Willie.
Hell, I'm just having coffee.
That's a wise move. I think we actually have a third degree of separation going on here. You might explain, James. There's a link between a member of your family and Willy T as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's funny how the years roll on, and in the motorsport world, it tends to happen with numerous of people and numerous of families. But my uncle Michael Rowe done Formula Ford 1600 back in the late 70s, early 80s in the UK, and Can-Am in America won that championship in '84. But he raced against Willie, and Willie raced against Michael back in the day. From what I believe, Willie will know more on it. But the fact that, you know, the wheel is the full circle. Obviously, Michael's retired many years ago and now just enjoys watching motor racing. But you then fast forward, I'd say 30 or 40 years, and here you are in an interview talking about a win that I just had in America at Mid-Ohio in single seaters with Willie, who raced against my uncle. And you know, it's a sport, I think, like no other, where once you're in it from the early days, you're stuck in it for life. And the stories from back in the day, I just love. I mean, what it took for those guys to go racing, and the commitment and desire. It's nothing but a motivation aspect for me. It's pretty cool.
The racing game scene and the racing game has changed, certainly, Willie, over the years. And I guess back in your day, it was different, but it was still enjoyable. And those races against the likes of Nigel Mansell and Michael Rowe, as James mentioned, were the good old days, I guess.
Yeah, I got to tell you, that race that Michael Rowe and I and Nigel Mansell had, it was my very fourth race in my career. And, you know, I was beginning. And that race, Michael Rowe taught me more in one race as far as dirty tricks. Oh, man, when that race was over, the practice was over. I mean, I learned how to short break people in the center of a corner. I learned how to do the deep chop. I learned how to come off sideways off the corner to block the whole track. Michael Rowe could do all that. And I was, you know, and him and Nigel and I and him had a great race. I mean, it was just like this every lap. And in the end, it was Michael winning it. I was second and Nigel was third. Well, we didn't know each other until we rode around the track in the back of a lorry or a truck, if you're in Texas, with laurel wreaths on our neck. And that's how we met each other. Wow. On the back of that truck, going around the track, doing the Queen wave, right? And I asked Mike, I said, how'd you learn how to drive like that? He says, that's how we do it here, right? And Mansell was doing the same thing, but not quite as overt. Mm-hmm. I mean, Michael Rowe was doing it in practice. Well, hell with the race. Well, I mean, he was right out of the pits. He was doing the old sidewinder. You know, a sidewinder in Texas is a rattlesnake. Well, that's how they crawl. So, I learned a lot. And that experience over there was the best thing I could have ever done at the beginning of my career.
I wonder how many of those dirty tricks you've picked up, James, from the family line. Like you've obviously had for all the people listening in Ireland, watching in Ireland today. I mean, for anyone who isn't aware, you had your, as I mentioned, rookie season in Indy Pro 2000, but really, you captured your first win in that season finale at Mid-Ohio, and 25-lap race in the wet, probably conditions that suited you down to the ground. But what an extraordinary way for you to finish your rookie career. I'm sure you were delighted with that. Probably one of the top races in your career, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it got to be. I mean, Mid-Ohio, for those that don't know, is notoriously hard to pass that. It's very much where you qualify is where you finish style racetrack. I qualified in the third row in sixth position. Wasn't too happy with it. And then the rain came for the race, and Michael was actually at the race, which is quite funny. And he suggested one or two things to do, which is honest. And I'm not just saying that from his experience in the wet weather driving in America over the years. And we went out and just laid it all out there. You know, it's the last race of the year. You have nothing to lose. You're fighting for your career, your partners, your sponsors, everyone's on board. Your team have done so much for you, and you lay it all down there. And thankfully, between the setup and the team's strategy side of things and my driving, it all came together. And yeah, started sixth, got up to fourth in the first lap, then up to third, and then the safety car came out, and like I said, mega pace compared to the others. I mean, we're over a second lap faster at times than the guys on the track, and just said on lap, I think it was 16, all right, here we go, it's time to get on with it. And I sat in behind them up on the lap point, judging where they were fast and where I was fast. That's something that he always taught me is to sit back for a lap or two just to figure a few things out. And once I knew where I was strong and they were weak, we pounced and got in the lead and stretched out to a couple of seconds ahead. But then with 3 laps to go, someone went off and safety car came out. I said, damn, that's my lead gone now. Track was drying a lot, and we didn't have as much pace towards the end as we did at the start of the race, because the race was deemed a wet weather race, so everyone was on wet tires. However, it was drying so fast, the wets just weren't lasting. I said, oh boy, here we go, this is going to slip away from me now. So just on the restart, I went very early, and outfoxed them essentially. They didn't think I was going to go so early and got the jump, and that was enough to hold them off for 3 laps and ultimately get the win. So yeah, it was phenomenal. And I think the fact that it went from 6th to 1st and we're so dominant throughout the race from a pace perspective, as I said, over a second a lap faster for a number of laps in those conditions around Mid-Ohio, which is notoriously hard to pass at, is just why it was probably one of the best drives of my career at a point where I needed it most. And Willy knows all about that. When the pressure's on and it's contract season now, it's off season in motorsport and in the Indianapolis area, you got to perform this time of year, otherwise I could have been booking a one-way ticket back to Ireland and said it's a return ticket. So that's all good.
Yeah, an incredible time to get it for sure. Like Willy, from your own career, like I watched, I mentioned the Netflix documentary at the top there, and if anyone hasn't seen it, Uppity, the Willy T Ribbs story, it's just an incredible look on your life and career. First black driver to race in the Indy 500, first black driver to test the Formula One car. Like you had some unimaginable hurdles to overcome. excuse me, to overcome in terms of racism, especially in the deep south in America in the 70s and 80s. Death threats, Confederate flags at tracks, white drivers. I think in Talladega, wasn't it, spitting at your feet? You had racist graffiti in toilet walls. Like, it was a tough time to be a black driver in what was essentially back then a white sport.
I didn't give a damn. I'm going to tell you right now, I never saw myself other than a race driver. And if any other driver, any personnel, or anyone in auto racing ever thought that I was going to let them treat me different, they found out that wasn't happening. And I enjoyed the challenge of it. Back then, I mean, and Lewis Hamilton's dad, Anthony, said to me, he says, we had a little opposition coming through, but not like you. And how did you deal with it? I said, oh, I loved it. In fact, I antagonized it. You want to be mad? Oh, I can make you real mad. I can make you madder than you've ever been. And that was my approach. If you're going to treat me different other than just being a man, right, good or bad, then I'm going to treat you different, and it's not going to be warm and fuzzy. And that's how I approached it. Now, when I was in England, I had no problems. It was the best experience in the world, racing in England. Now, Nigel, Michael Rowe, Bill Shepard, all the Trevor Van Rooyen, all the guys I raced against, they were tough. They were hard-nosed race drivers. But out of the car, we were just young guys wanting to get to the top. And that was the greatest experience. And I didn't want to come home. I would have stayed there if I hadn't run out of money.
It's incredible. It's an incredible time. And like you mentioned Lewis Hamilton and Anthony Hamilton there, and to see what Lewis is doing now, I guess, in Formula One is quite incredible with 7 World Championship wins. And look, he's a role model to all young, I guess, potential motorsport enthusiasts and kids these days, especially black kids. And when you see the Black Lives Matter movement at the moment, Willy, and you see what's happening in Formula One and the changes that are happening and the work that's being done, it's so important, really, I guess, and for black kids to have role models like that. I know you possibly had Joey Ray growing up, and for people that aren't aware of Joey's story, like 1947 became the first African American, I think, licensed by the American Automobile Association. So to have those role models, and you were one yourself, is so important.
Well, there's one role model that's right behind you in this picture, and his name is Muhammad Ali. And Ali took me under his wing. I met him in London, and we ran and jogged through Hyde Park together. And he let me be in his company for a week. He knew what I was doing, and he was giving me advice. And having role models is great because there are people who blaze trails before you is inspiring. However, what Formula One is doing and Formula One is the king of auto racing. There's no bigger auto racing organization or association bigger than Formula One. For Formula One to take that lead, to set an example, for Formula One to be a role model and take that example, to open up the sport to all people, which is makes Formula One even bigger. If someone locks themselves out in their own community and says, well, it's just for us, well, you're limited to yourself. You just limited your bottom line. Well, when you open it up to everybody and you promote it, it's worldwide. It's the best thing for your organization. It's the best thing for the sport, and people are motivated by it.
For sure, and like, I guess that impact that role models have is quite something, and often it's unspoken, really. But even for, like, the parallels and differences in your two careers, it was quite interesting when I was doing my research here. Like, I know, Willie, in the film you mentioned the fact that your father didn't really want you to be a racing driver, and on the flip side of that, I guess for you, James, I mean, I know we've mentioned your uncle Michael, distinguished driver, legend of the sport. And inducted into the Irish Motorsport Hall of Fame as well too. I should mention. But you started off, James, working in your father's garage, growing up in Naas in County Kildare. So I guess that's where the love of motorsport kicked off for yourself.
Yeah, there's really many ways to look at it, and the reality is, I think, no matter what sport you're talking about, whether it's Muhammad Ali or whether it's motorsport with Willie's career or Michael's career or any sports person, the way I look at it, even any of the top current IndyCar drivers like Dixon or, Rossi or whoever that may be, it all starts with a deep desire to want to do something, regardless of what it takes, the limit, the things that hold you back. Certain things in sports just drive you so much regardless of the limit. And for my case, the limit for me was funding at the time to get into the sport. It's a sport like no other, where you don't buy a pair of football boots or a baseball bat and go play. You have cars, you have engines, you have tires, you have crew, you have haulers, you have fuel, track fees. The list goes on and on and on, just to even get on the track before you put it off and damage it. Like, that's just baseline to get on it. So for me, my uncle knew that Michael from his career, and we basically didn't have the money at the time, and Dad and uncle turned around and said, all right, well, here's the deal. The family repair shop in Naas, you have the resources to run the car and the tools to work on it. Your uncle has the knowledge to set it up and coach or whatever from his career. So it was, I guess, a flip to the current model, where most IndyCar or Formula One drivers, or even guys in, Indy Pro 2000 or Indy Lights or Formula 2 over here in Europe, start go-karting at 4 or 5 years of age. I didn't start till I was 15 years of age, purely because I had to save up and purchase my own race car. That was the deal. You save up and buy your first race car, and we'll run it for you. So it took me till I was 14 to save up and buy my first race car. And then we went to the racetrack and ran the podium the first day and said, okay, I better take this serious. But what the parallel for me is, to your question, is that it's to want to succeed and doing whatever it takes to succeed. Back to Willie and what he's done. Like, even for me, just listening to his story right now, and obviously watch the show on Netflix, for a guy to go over to America back in that era as a Black African American and take on these figures in the UK who are highly established. Like, just that desire and that want to succeed and take a move from home is very similar to me, and I can only relate to it as me moving from Ireland to America after I'd never been to America whatsoever. Landed in America in 2018, never even been to the country, just finished high school in Ireland, and had my leaving cert and landed and went racing. And, I don't know how you even describe it, but it's just, sport just puts a certain desire in people's mind, and if you really want something, I think the common denominator is you got to go get it. No one's going to hand it to you on a plate, and Willie's story was no different, and hopefully mine will be similar.
Yeah, like that word desire that you mentioned there, James, like for you, Willie, unquestionably you had that desire, because I remember hearing the story of you, I think essentially joyriding a car at 12 years of age and getting caught by your dad. And I know your dad.
Sounds familiar. Maybe I've done the same.
Really? Well, there you go. See, there's parallels all over the place here. But like,
oh no, I didn't get caught by my dad.
Okay.
I got caught by the sheriff.
Right.
Oh,
yeah,
even worse.
My dad wouldn't have been a problem, but the sheriff, everyone in town knew my family, mainly because my grandfather's business, right? And he had a very successful business. And so I got caught. Well, I was in a Lotus Cortina when I got caught, and he couldn't see me. I was so small, he could not see from the back windshield. He could barely see the top of my head. So when he pulled over, and and the only reason he caught me is because I slowed down. I was driving away from him up this mountain road, and I slowed down to turn around and come back. Well, that's when he got me, and so that was sort of the. And then my parents sent me to the ranch. Right after that, I was sent to my grandfather's ranch, and about 150 miles away on 300 acres. So. They thought it was going to be a little bit easier for me to, or a little bit harder for me to get in trouble up on the ranch, especially with Henry.
It sounds like heading to the ranch, though, was possibly worse than any punishment the sheriff could give you, because I think one of the quotes from the film was that your grandfather was 5'4", but as big as Shaquille O'Neal. Like,
he was clearly a scary man. He was very imposing. He was very honest. He was fair, but he was tough. He did not take when he told you to do something, you did it, and you didn't argue with him. And he was, no matter who he was around, black, white, Asian, who people automatically, when he walked into the room, it was like Bernie Ecclestone walking in the room. You knew this. He was a very smart, very poised man, but he was the one. It wasn't my dad that didn't like racing, because my dad raced. It was my grandfather. You didn't mention it around him. No, he didn't want to hear about anything about racing. It was about business and how to build the business. That's all he cared about.
Wow. It strikes me like all these backgrounds kind of help mold you into someone who really has to become self-sufficient. And I think one of the lines from either your father or your grandfather was, be your own boss. And like, even for you, James, I remember we spoke before about Drive to Survive on Netflix and how it's kind of inspired a new generation of Formula One fans. And one of the things that really stood out is the fact that you can be teammates with someone in Formula One or Indy racing or whatever it might be, Trans Am or anything, but yet they are the person you probably most want to beat. So it's a strange dynamic. And I know Willy had that as well, but it's certainly a strange one, wanting to beat your teammate more than anyone else.
Yeah, I think that the reality with this sport, and it's funny, I only spoke to Michael about it last night, speaking about my end of things and what we're going to be doing next year and so on and so forth, is that albeit it's a team sport where you have mechanics and engineers and crew chiefs and truck drivers and engine builders and gearbox builders, whatever that may be, it's only your name that's on the results sheet at the end of the day, and your name on the side of the car and your name comes up on the results sheet, whether it's first, second, third, fourth, whatever that may be. And it's your name that's either champion or not champion. So the good days are great and the bad days are not so good because it's your name that's on the line and that's the bottom line. It's not like, we compared it to sport like rugby or American football or whatever that may be, where there's 15, 20, 30 guys as a team together who win and lose together, truly, because they're all, it's one, whatever it may be, Irish rugby team won or the Green Bay Packers won, whatever that may be, there's a team, but motorsport is a driver won or lost, and that's the reality of it. So that's why I think it's very cutthroat, because you're fighting for your own right and your own results, and guys will do whatever it takes to win. And to be honest with you, that's why I love the sport. It's that want to succeed and that cutthroat factor that makes it very enjoyable.
Like that cutthroat factor that James mentions, Willy, was similar for yourself, because a lot of people kind of picked you up the wrong way in some ways. I remember the alley shuffle you used to do on the top of the car as one of your celebrations, and it seemed to rile a lot of people up. David Hobbs was one of your teammates at the time. So this similar cutthroat dynamic was something you experienced throughout your career, and even maybe, for example, being told before a race that, you know, for the benefit of the team, you might have to finish second and let the teammate finish first. Like, did that rub you up the wrong way, or is that just part of the sport?
Well, before we get into getting rubbed the wrong way, teammates compete not just with each other within the racing team. You compete how much more you can eat than your teammate, how many more girls. Hey, if you're going out the same bar, same pub, you want to outpick up your teammate. You want to get the hottest savage in there, right? So, you know, you compete with everything with your teammate. And I just think it was, you know, a lot of, you know, Hobbs, for example. I mean, we competed everywhere, from the hotel to the racetrack, on the racetrack. After the race, we'll race back to the hotel. That's how that was the mindset that I had, and that everyone else that I competed against, you know, maybe not everyone, but many, you know, it's about having control, and not being beaten. So no matter what it was, whether it was in the bar competing who could get the hottest savage in there, or on a racetrack.
Yeah,
and I loved it. Oh, I loved it. That was an absolute turn on.
Like that competitive element, even from watching the documentary, when Wally Dallenbach Jr. was your teammate, and he speaks in the film as well. And there is a certain scene that is very reminiscent of Days of Thunder, when you have the rental cars. There's something even Top Gun-esque about it. There's clearly a macho, bravado kind of competitive spirit between the two of you.
Oh yeah, and you know, back in the day, Bobby Unser and I, before he passed, well, you know, we were very close, and Uncle Bobby would tell us about the races they would have. They would, back in the days before they would put fences around swimming pools, on the night after the race, they'd get liquored up, and they would drive cars into the swimming pool and see how many they could pancake until it came out of the water. So they would stack 3 or 4 cars on top, run up and stack them in the swimming pool. And pretty soon they weren't allowed to rent anymore. They were banned for life. Uncle Bobby and Al Hunter Sr., they were not allowed to rent cars from Hertz, and I think Hertz was the big rental car company in those days. Couldn't do it.
It's hilarious.
You haven't had any issues renting cars, James? No incidents like that.
What's really funny about that, and I wish I knew that story a week prior, is Johnny Unser, which is, I guess, Bobby's son, maybe?
No. That's Jerry's son. In fact, I just talked to Johnny 2 weeks ago. He's up in Idaho hunting.
So Johnny's the race director for the series that I'm in. He's the race director for Indy Pro 2000, and I was with him on Saturday. I was involved in a little incident with a guy, and he wanted to see what was going on, but he understood where I was coming from, and there was no issues. In fact, he actually gave the other guy a penalty, which is kind of funny. But yeah, they're guys that understand the hard knock style of racing.
I can imagine, for sure. If I just bring you both, I guess, to Indianapolis and to that Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and look, James, myself and yourself have spoken about this place before. It's somewhere I've visited, but visited from a completely different angle. Like I'm a member of the public who's there, looking at the yard of bricks and Gasoline Alley and knowing I will never drive a car around that track. But maybe tell me a little bit about what it's like to be a young Irish, essentially teenager kid, when you first went over, visiting that track, and what that place meant to you, to see it in person and know that someday your ambition was to race there.
I mean, I think the biggest thing, there's something about that place that, again, it's something that you feel when you drive in under the tunnel of Indianapolis Motor Speedway to go into the track, and you realize where you are with the history that's been there, the guys that have raced there, the names that have raced there, the battles that have been fought there, the life-changing moments that have happened there for guys, career-defining moments. There's just an energy there, even when there's no one there, and Willie will testify a lot better than I would, but I just felt that the minute you walked in, the track is phenomenal. I was in America 2 months at the time in 2018. I got an opportunity to race there in USF 2000, which is the first rung of the road to Indy in the USA. A guy couldn't get into the country, and a team had a seat, and they called up last minute and said, come and race. So I was in America 2 months, never been there before, 18 years of age, and racing at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You go across the yard of bricks that are so famous in the world of motorsport. It's the racing capital of the world. I mean, the list just goes on. It's hard to even put it into words. The place just has this persona and energy factor about it. I mean, it's home of the biggest one-day sporting event in the world. That's in its own right is phenomenal. And I think, as I said, the main thing is just, if you step back and take it in for a minute and think about the fights that have been fought here, the battles that have been won, and the life-changing moments for certain drivers, whether good or bad, that happen here at this track on certain days, usually in the month of May, every year in Indy 500. I think it's phenomenal, absolutely awesome.
Like for you, Willie, I know Don King came on board ultimately with you, and I think his quote was, "I'll make you a superstar." But just beyond that, like your first attempt at the Indy 500 in 1985, as covered in the film, didn't quite go to plan. I mean, and it was quite dangerous in some ways. I know, whether intentionally or unintentionally, your windscreen was essentially too low, which could have caused serious damage to you heading into turn one for the first time. As someone who had never raced there before, your first experience of attempting the Indy 500 didn't exactly go to plan.
Well, I only ran there one day. We practiced one day, and that was, the windscreen was just a small element of the issue. The crew chief and I did not talk. He would not talk to me, and that was a problem right there. There was just I knew he didn't want me there, and he wasn't interested in putting me. There was a vibe that I got from him that told me you can't be with this guy, and you cannot be in what Indy is. And James just said it. It is the most famous racetrack on the planet. It is a racetrack and one of the most dangerous, apart from the Isle of Man. Indy is one of the most dangerous places ever, but it is also the most rewarding. And when you go there, you have to have everyone behind you with their best interests, that they are, in effect, are putting their life on the line, just like you're putting your life on the line. And that's what you must demand. Well, I knew right away after, the night before, we had a meeting inside where the head team was based in Indy there. And I knew right there that night before I even got in the car, I said, this is not going to be good. So I walked away from it. It was just practice. It was rookie orientation. And I walked out, and I got a lot of criticism for it. But those who knew the truth said you did the right thing. When I came back in 1991 with Tim Wardrop, who was one of the best engineers you could ever have at Indy, and Laurie Garish and John Waters and Buddy Lindblom, we went, even with our limited resources, we went and we got the job done.
Yeah, for sure. And it was certainly learning experiences anytime you go around that track, for sure. We just need to take a short ad break, guys. But anyone tuning in, we are live with the Saturday panel here on Off the Ball on News Talk. And I'm joined by two legends, really. And guys starting off at different levels of their motorsport career. But Willy T Ribbs was the voice you just heard.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.
Afternoons are easy with insuremyvan.ie, Ireland's low-cost van insurance specialist. Get your business back on the road with Insure My Van's best price guarantee. For super savings, visit insuremyvan.ie. City Financial Marketing Group Limited, trading as insuremyvan.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The Tile Style Autumn Sale is now on. Buy now and get 40% off nearly all Porcelanosa tiles. In stock now and ready for your renovation project. Get huge reductions in top brand bathrooms, kitchens and wood flooring too. Buy now ahead of inevitable price increases on your home renovation. It's the Tile Style Sale. In stock now and ready for you at Tile Style, Ballymount Retail Centre and tilestyle.ie.
So I was talking to my financial advisor about my business. I told him I keep meaning to organise a pension scheme for my staff, but who has the time, right? He advised me to make time. Otherwise, I'm breaking the law.
If you're an employer, you must give your staff access to an occupational pension scheme or a PRSA. Contact your financial or legal advisor to ensure you're compliant. The Pensions Authority regulates occupational pension schemes and PRSAs. Find out more at pensionsauthority.ie.
Thank you for calling. For sales, press 1. For accounts, press 2. To hear how your business can soar to new heights, just keep listening. Introducing Cloud Voice from Virgin Media Business. Now you can rip out your old phone system and reap the rewards of our next generation voice solution. Cloud Voice unleashes your business, giving you the freedom to connect on any device, wherever work takes you. See virginmedia.ie/business now and bring on amazing. Terms and conditions apply.
At Power City, you can experience the new range of LG OLED TV, now with better contrast, colour display and gaming capability than ever before. For more information, go online to powercity.ie or call in store today.
At 3, we're giving business a big step up with our Built for Business offers, like a new Samsung Galaxy S21 on us when you switch to 3, saving you over €200 and on Ireland's fastest mobile network. Visit us in store or at 3.ie/business for our full range of offers on phones, plans and solutions. 3 Business, where connections come to life. Offer available on the €59 per month plan over 24 months. Ireland's fastest mobile network based on Ookla analysis of speed test intelligence data Q1 to Q2 2021.
They say that every great meal is an expression of love. From family favourites to a tasty snack for ravenous teenagers. It's all about putting your heart on the plate. That's what Love Irish food brands are all about. Local producers putting their hearts into sourcing quality ingredients, creating delicious food and thousands of jobs. So next time you shop, look out for the Love Irish Food heart. Put the heart in your basket and onto your plate. Love Irish Food for quality Irish food brands.
In this weekend's Sunday Times, read opinions that matter on the stories of the week from our columnists Justine McCarthy, David Quinn and Brenda Power, and be entertained by Liam Fay and Jeremy Clarkson. Pick up your copy of the Sunday Times or access every digital edition free for the first month by subscribing today at thetimes.ie/join.
How do you put a value on real expertise? How do you put a value on the training, experience and precision that only an expert brings? Well, 8 out of 10 Irish drivers know how. Because when it comes to protecting the resale value of your Volkswagen, 8 out of 10 Irish drivers would pay more for a Volkswagen serviced by Volkswagen expert technicians. Help protect your resale value and keep your Volkswagen a Volkswagen. Book your classic service from only €179 at volkswagenservice.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
Red Hot Chili Peppers are back. Anthony, Chad, Flea and John live on stage. World Tour 2022 with very special guests. Anderson .Paak and the Free Nationals and Thundercat. Marley Park, Dublin, June 29th. Tickets from $89.50 on sale this Friday at 10 a.m. Additional charges may apply, subject to license. Check more at redhotchilipeppers.com.
Dundeal has the largest range of premium cars in Ireland, from Ireland's trusted car dealerships. That's why you'll find Spirit Motor Group on Dundeal. Stop by Spirit Motor Group's online showroom on Dundeal and connect with them for great deals today. Dundeal, for premium cars to feel great about, from all of Ireland's trusted car dealerships.
on 106 to 108 FM.
On the News Talk app, powered by Go Loud.
And on smart speaker. This is News Talk.
It's 2 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Bernadette Jamieson. The Garda Economic Crime Bureau says the lockdowns were a perfect storm for ruthless scammers and criminals. It's warned businesses in particular of scam calls, texts and emails with malicious actors trying to steal money. They've called on the public to report any white-collar crime immediately, and it will be investigated thoroughly and discreetly. Detective Chief Superintendent and the lead officer in the Bureau, Pat Lorden, said a business owner was reduced to tears because the criminals were about to bankrupt him.
I've dealt with a lot of serious crime, and financial crime is quite serious as well. But he cried at the other end of the phone when I told him on a Friday afternoon that we had recovered €127,000 of his money because his business was going to close down if we hadn't got his money back. And that's one example of a business that was going to be wiped out.
The Department of Health has been notified of 1,940 new cases of COVID-19 today. It's a small decrease on yesterday's figure. There are 352 people being treated in hospital for COVID-19, 74 of whom are in intensive care. It was also announced today that 92% of adults in Ireland are now fully vaccinated against COVID. Aontú has published its pre-budget submission calling on the government to tackle what it calls the economic ageism working against young people. The party said the skyrocketing cost of life in Ireland is stealing the futures away from our young people. Aontú leader Deputy Peadar Tobin said the idea of this generation owning their own homes is a pipe dream many will never see come true, and this budget needs to deliver substantive reform.
Many people right now are considering leaving Ireland because Ireland has become too expensive for them to live. And housing is obviously one of those key expenses. So we in Aontú are looking for the government to start to tackle housing properly. The first thing that needs to be done is to tackle the amount of houses that are empty in this state. There's 180,000 vacant homes in this state, and at least if half of those were tackled in relation to getting them back into use, it would have a significant effect over supply.
Lebanon has been left without any centrally generated electricity after the country's two main power stations were forced to close. It's because of a fuel shortage, with officials warning the issues could last for several days. Many Lebanese people rely on private generators. It's 2:02.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Enjoy a midterm getaway to Malaga, Faro, Gran Canaria and more, with 60,000 more seats now on sale.
Mostly cloudy with patchy light rain or drizzle over the eastern half of the country, but drier in the west. Highs of 15 to 18 degrees in light to moderate northwesterly winds. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
And you're very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. Shane Hannon with you right through until 5 p.m. this evening. And we're continuing now with our Saturday panel. One for the motorsport, I guess, thrill seekers and enthusiasts out there today. And it's an Indy racing special with two guys in different generations of their careers. Willy T Ribbs, motorsport legend, and the focus of the Netflix documentary film Uppity, the Willy T Ribbs Story. An excellent watch. If you haven't given it a watch, certainly do. And James Rowe from Kildare just finished his rookie season in Indy Pro 2000, where he finished with a season-ending win in mid-Ohio. Lads, we were just talking during the ads there about the fact that James, you're 22 now, I think approaching 23 this month. And Willie, when you were 22, 23 years of age, I guess if you could turn back the clock and give a 22-year-old Willy T Ribbs any words of advice that maybe James could pick up from, what would they be?
Go hard. Everything, go hard. I mean, that applies to everything. Go, stay hard, son. But that's how, that was the way I lived it. And that and staying hard means not being deterred. Not, I mean, some races are going to be better than others. I mean, you finished off the season, you're going on vacation with that first place trophy in your hand as you go to Hawaii or the Caribbean, and you can sit out, lay out on the beach and put that trophy right next to that drink stand and just, you go, you take a vacation on a high note. And and that's the only way to, that's why you live. That's why you compete, right? And sure, you want to win every race. That might not happen, but when you win, there's no other feeling. And in terms of motivating you to go to the next level. When I won my first race in Formula Fords in Snetterton, that was, it answered the biggest question I had when I landed in England. Could I win? Could I win at that level that I was competing at? And I won. That answered the question.
Yeah.
When I for the reason I went there. From then, it was to go to the next level. Keep grinding, keep working to the next level.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, you are right. No winning or no feeling like winning. I think it's the same for any sports star. And I'm sure, Shane, you speak to many of them on a weekly basis, and everyone say the same thing, regardless of the discipline.
It's interesting, and like when I hear Willy speak as well, and like for you, James, I know I think it's approaching 5 years ago next month when you became the first Irishman to compete in Formula 4. Like when you look ahead now, and you have that as Willy said, first trophy in Indy Pro 2000 in your back pocket. Like, do you look ahead? Do you have ambitions down the line of Formula One? Is it Indy 500? Is it winning the Indy 500? Is it a certain thing where year by year you have a plan, or is it just take it? I know it's a cliche, but take it 1 year at a time.
No, I mean there's two things here. The dream is to be the first Irishman to win the Indy 500. I mean, that's a fact. That is just the absolute dream. The goal is to have a sustainable long-term career through motorsport, i.e. being paid to drive race cars. Obviously, if I achieve the dream, I'm going to achieve the goal, but getting to the Indy 500 is what's on the list right now. And that's what I think about every morning before I step foot on the floor. And it's why I'm in America racing. I absolutely loved in America. I mean, that country is just phenomenal. I love every day I'm in the country, and I've been there for 4 years now, and there's nothing I change about it. So I want to stay there racing for as long as I can, and hopefully have a long-term career in the USA. So Formula One or racing in Europe isn't on the agenda right now. However, like anything in life, if a good enough opportunity comes up down the road, obviously you look at it and potentially take it. But for now, it's full steam ahead in the USA, chasing that Indy 500 dream, and seeing what we can do along the way, and hopefully rack up a couple of more wins.
Like, as those opportunities come up, and for you, Willy, it was, I guess, different things happen. Like Paul Newman gives you a call at one point and gets you back involved in, I think it was Trans Am, and like when you look at moments like that, and even moments like, I guess we'll touch on Bernie Ecclestone, and you became the first black driver to drive a Formula One car. It was testing in Portugal. Like, what was that experience like? I'm sure bittersweet in some ways. I mean, it was clearly an incredible achievement to get into a Formula One car. It's such a powerful machine. But you weren't signed on for the season as a driver. So how do you feel when you look back on that moment and those, I guess, experiences with Bernie Ecclestone?
I've had a lot of mentors in my career, and I wouldn't say a lot, a few. And Muhammad Ali was one of them. Paul Newman was one of them. Dan Gurney was one of them. Well, Bernie Ecclestone, I met him that weekend at Brands Hatch when I was racing against Michael Rowe and Nigel Mansell. And Bernie and Gordon Murray came to the track. I don't know if they were scouting, but and looking at the young drivers, but Bernie and Gordon Murray came up to me and said, "We just wanted to meet you. We're watching you. Keep up the good work." The conversation might have lasted 1 or 2 minutes, and in the paddock, and that was another message that I got, that was the perfect move to come to England. Winning, meeting Bernie Ecclestone, and when he put me in his car, the Brabham in Portugal, I was dominating Trans Am. And Herbie Blash called me and said, we want you to come over to Estoril and do a test. So I flew over. Bernie wasn't at the test. Charlie Whiting was there. Charlie was overseeing what was happening with the car and myself. And Herbie Blash was there. The first 3 days of the 5-day test rained. And so they didn't want to put me out in that 1,000 horsepower 4-cylinder BMW turbo in the rain. So finally we got out once it stopped raining, and we got up to speed. And it was a great experience. Herbie Blash said, we didn't expect you to go faster than what we planned for you to go, but you did, and we're really happy about that. Bernie let me know that about a week after that, Olivetti wanted 2 Italian drivers. They wanted D'Angelis and they wanted Patrese. And I totally understood that. You know, they were an Italian sponsor and they wanted the Italian drivers. And Bernie needed the bills paid, so he wasn't going to buck that. But it was a great experience.
I can only imagine, an extraordinary experience. And then, like, when you move on to we spoke about your first attempt at getting into the Indy 500, but I guess the second attempt is really the climax and emotional high point, certainly of the film on Netflix. I mean, talk to me about that experience in 1991, because it looked on a knife edge for quite some time whether your car would make it to the final lineup of 33 for the race, but you got there in the end.
We were on a very limited budget, and we were using Buick engines. They were notoriously powerful, but they were just as notorious for being hand grenades, right? I mean, those things there, if you over revved them, you know, by 1,000 RPMs, they were going to leave parts all over the racetrack. So we lost 4 engines, and it limited my track time. I needed as much track time for myself and get the car set up to go fast for qualifying. And so it limited my track time. Later on, we found out there was some rod bolts that were very weak. They were snapping. Finally, on the final day, with some real pressure on the head of Buick Motorsports, who did not want to give us an engine. The head of Buick Motorsports said no. Well, there was some pressure that was put on his testicles. And finally, we got an engine, which was a factory engine. And we went out and did the job. There was no time at that point where I didn't think we could go fast. I mean, Tim Wardrop is that good. He was just, and he was really cool. I mean, he had a Beatles type of haircut, and he was very eccentric with his glasses, but brilliant in terms of making cars go quick around Indy. When we went out, it was easy to drive. And this is for you, James. Mm-hmm. When the car at Indy is easy to drive, you're going to go fast. Yeah. It's just, it's almost effortless. And that's a real thin line between good and bad. When it's bad, it's not a comfortable ride. And one thing that Bobby Unser told me, and Mario Andretti, make the car work for you. Mm-hmm. At Indy, make the car work for you. Once they get it right, you'll drive around there and you'll say, wow, that wasn't hard at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, ovals are my first oval this year, Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis, Gateway. And put it on pole there on our first try. It was the first pole I got in the Indy Pro 2000 series, and just like you said, we really worked on the car. And I think ovals, you know, something about them, a quick lap on an oval when everything's humming or everything's singing, as you say, and your inches or half an inch or maybe touching the wall at times, that thrill factor is unbelievable, and I can only imagine that Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it's going to be a thrill, that's for sure.
So you're good in the oval and good in the rain as well, James. That's not a bad start.
Yeah.
Like that 91 race for you, Willie. Like you see the final qualifying comes down to, I guess, 4 laps, 10 miles, average speed of the driver to get into that final grid of 33. The scenes and the emotion at the end when your car has finally achieved the required speed is something quite moving. Like I know you got quite emotional in the film recording at that particular point. I think I felt like I was cutting onions when I was watching that part as well, because you think back to different parts in your life of, you know, racing in places like Wilkesboro, North Carolina, which are Ku Klux Klan strongholds, you know, booed by the crowd. I think someone in the film says the Civil War is dead, but it's still smoldering in some areas. And to go from that to the scenes at the end in 1991 where you qualify and people cheering you into the pit lane. I think you said there was a black engineer maybe crying his eyes out as you drove in. So really emotional scenes. And like, can you take yourself back there at the speed of thought?
Well, when I went out and there was 15 or 18 minutes to go in qualifying. You know, qualifying's over at 6 p.m. Final day, Sunday. Picture, if you will, you know, the buzz at the racetrack, the energy. And we knew, I knew the car was going to qualify. There was no doubt. If the engine survived 4 laps around there, and that's the tough thing about Indy. Every race on the planet, they take your best 1 lap. At the Indianapolis 500, you run 4 laps or 10 miles. Anything can happen in 10 miles. So when I drove down, when I left the tech and you start down the pit lane, there's these yellow shirts, all these officials in yellow shirts. Well, one of the officials was an older black gentleman. And when I drove by him, then they salute you as you go down the pit lane. They're sending you off. Well, tears were coming down his eyes. I looked, as I went by him, I could see tears, and his hand was shaking. And I thought, man, don't look at that. You're going to start crying yourself. So I turned my head away. And then once you get out onto that track, you drive straight out. You don't go down all the way around the corner and exit at turn 2. You go straight out. And when I got out there, I knew, all right, it's time to get it on. No ifs, ands, or buts. You can't. And I knew that if I had a problem, it wasn't right, I couldn't just come in and fix it. We were out of time. So to do it, and it was an easy ride. The first 2.5 to 3 laps, piece of cake. The last lap of qualifying, the front was starting to slip a little bit in the center of the corner. It's starting to walk out a little bit. So I had to breathe it a couple of times. First 2 laps was flat out all the way around. And that's a great feeling. When you can hold that foot down around there and it's a nice ride, boy, you know you're carrying the lumber, son. So, you know, it's a great feeling. It gives you a lot of confidence. When we qualified, I knew we were in the show. I knew it. I didn't have a radio, but we had the board, right? And it was, it didn't set in until I came around the pit suites in turn 2, and the crowd on the pit suites on 5 levels were waving their arms. You can't hear anyone, but you can see them. And then on the way in the pit lane, it was one of the greatest experiences in my career, if not the greatest experience, coming down pit lane, and the team members, other team members and mechanics were all giving high fives all the way down pit lane.
I mean, those 10 miles really were no fear driving, and something you mentioned, James, there as well, like moments where you're, you know, the side of the wheel is pretty much touching the wall. you have to get your mathematics pretty spot on when you're driving those cars. Like, for people who might not realise, back in 2014, you were the youngest person ever to race an open wheel race car in Ireland when you were just 16, I think. And for people who aren't maybe motorsport fans listening in today, open wheel, when the wheels of the car are outside the main body of the car, usually they're one seat. So the cars that look like Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 and Indy cars. I mean, what was that moment like for you? But not only that, even nowadays, do you have to drive with no fear? Is there any element of fear in the back of your head, or is it completely, when you get into the cockpit of the car, there is no element or remnants of fear in your head?
No, I mean, I don't know. There's no fear. That's just a fact of, and I'm not just saying that here in an interview. That's just a fact. I mean, I can't remember the last time I was scared doing what I was doing. I mean, it's a belief in your own ability. It's a belief in your team around you. Don't get me wrong. There's moments when you're on a quick lap and something happens, a car snaps loose or starts pushing a little more than you like, understeer, whatever that may be, and you're kind of saying, oh boy, and you're reacting at that point. But I think there's a famous quote out there by Mario Andretti where he says, if you're thinking about it, you're not going fast enough. And that's the reality of it. And I always, go on that, you go on your natural good instinct. And that pole lap back in August at Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis, it's my first pole on an oval. And if you asked me, I was asked by numerous people after, what were you thinking on the lap, or what did you do? I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I just, like Willy says, you come out of the pits, you light it up, you're straight up to turn one, and we had 2 laps there. It was a 2-lap average. And thankfully it's enough for pole, but I don't know what I was thinking. And yes, we're up against the walls and stuff, but you're going to such a zone, and I hear a lot of sports people thinking about it. The days where you're not thinking about what you're doing tend to be the days, from my point of view, that go very well, because you're just natural ability, everything's going, you're in the flow. That's what I found. Now, every driver is going to be different, but there's not too much fear, not too much time to think. The only thing you tend to think about is in the race is, playing the chess game. Should I go now? Should I not go? What's coming? Is there lap traffic? Can I hang back a lap and utilize the lap traffic to get around them, or whatever that may be? It's an interesting sport.
Was it the same for you, Willy? Like when you're behind the wheel of the car, is it completely a case of zoned in, zoned out? Is it full focus on what you're doing, or does your brain flicker away at milliseconds or different moments?
The fear factor was not, I wouldn't call it ever being fear or being fearful. I would call it respect. Okay. And I've been asked a million times, do you ever get scared? No, I don't get scared, but I'm respectful of the environment that I'm in. I'm respectful of what the car is doing and what I can do with it. You don't want to do anything stupid, okay? And, or be reckless, especially when you're racing with people. There's some people that you can race with that you can pretty much trust that they're not going to put your life in their hands, right? And any driver that you cannot be sure that they're going to make the right decision, or they're going to harm you, or reckless, you got to let them know, you're not going to put my life in your hands, okay? And you got to make that clear. So it's respect, and drivers know that. You get to a certain level, there's unwritten rules out there. Mm-hmm. There's unwritten rules, and we're gonna live by them, or you might get your ass kicked after the race. That's just the way it is.
I mean, you talk about getting your ass kicked at the end of the race, and there's a couple of scenes, certainly from your career, where that comes into reality, I guess. It reminded me recently of watching the Schumacher documentary on Netflix, where he, I think, walks up the pit lane famously to confront David Coulthard. I think it was at Spa in Belgium. That's right. But you had a similar couple of incidents, I think, Willie, but one of the most famous ones was Scott Pruitt after, I think it was an IMSA race in Portland. And I know Caitlin Jenner talks in your documentary film as well, was then known as Bruce Jenner back in the 80s when he was a teammate of Scott Pruitt's. But you took exception to maybe something that happened in the race, but that was all just part and parcel of it, that these things happened and there were often handbags after a race.
Well, I mean, especially in bull rings, you got these half miles and quarter mile races in America, dirt and asphalt. Well, there's always a fight after a race. 50% of the time, there's a brawl, right? You see it in NASCAR right now. So, yeah, I mean, Pruitt and I had a huge rivalry, mainly stirred up by Jack Roush, right? And Pruitt and I, we're I wouldn't say we're friends now, but we're not. We talk. We'll speak to each other now. 20 years we didn't speak with each other at all, and so we laugh about it now, but in those days, we rumbled, and in the case of Portland, he was 2 laps down, and he took me out while leading. So there was in the parking lot after the race, which was not planned. They just happened to be driving down the pit lane, down the parking lot lane in Portland, and we had a little come to Jesus meeting.
Have you? There's been no threats of come to Jesus meetings in your first season Indy Pro 2000 yet, James?
No, but you get close at times. Like I wouldn't say it's a Willy T Ribbs standard, but times move on. But it's the reality is it's no different than, I always laugh at people trying to grab stories and moments of sports people hold on to, but it's no different than watching a rugby match or an NFL football match, and if something happens to one of the players, the two teams are going against each other. They care so much for what they're doing. So it's the same in our sport. When something happens with another driver, it takes so much to win. There's so much going into it. When there's an altercation with your rival, there's confrontation, and I try to do as much of my talking on the track, but there's certain individuals for sure that you have to have a little word with, or just let them know that what's going on and what was done in that race. They might have got away with today, but you're not going to get away with it next week if you try that again. And just that's really planting the seed, as my uncle tells me. Just plant the seed. That's all you got to do.
Like for you, James, and we're running out of time here, but I mean, for a lot of people that don't maybe realize, your team is quite Irish in its basis. You've got Trintex that started off in Trinity College, I think it was, in Kildare. And I know from speaking to you the last time, wasn't it, Darren Heffernan, another Kildare man, was involved with you as well. So maybe just give us a little bit of the background of the team and the Irish links.
Yeah, absolutely. So the team that with this year's an Irish-owned team out of Chicago called Turn 3 Motorsport, which is owned and ran by Peter Dempsey and his wife, Mandy Dempsey. Peter's Irish, was a professional race car driver in the United States, got up as far as Indy Lights, actually won the Freedom 100 in 2013, which is the Indy Lights equivalent of the Indy 500, happens the Friday before the Indy 500 every year. And I became a team owner and set up a team on the road to Indy. And obviously I was driving from this year. So I was an Irish driver for an Irish team in America, with Irish partners on board, obviously Trintec being one of them. They're now based out of Dallas, Texas. However, Darren Heffernan is the vice president of the mid-markets and a fellow Kildare man. So a strong Irish link there with the company being founded in Trinity College in Dublin many, many years ago. And then Topcon Positioning Systems, our Japanese corporation, are on board. However, the CEO of that global corporation is an Irishman called Ray O'Connor, also a Kildare man. So very much an Irish team taking on America and flying the Irish flags. That's why it felt so good to be standing on the top step of the podium in Ohio with an Irish flag behind us.
Yeah, it's incredible. And it's incredible feel-good story, I think, for Irish people listening in as well. Lads, we're pretty much out of time, but it's been really incredible to speak to you both. I've got a couple of quotes here that I wanted to mention as well, that before we finish up from the film. They're from your mouth, Willie, but I'm either in the race or you'll peel me off the cement, was one, I think, which really stood out for me, and it kind of highlights that no fear attitude that we kind of spoke about. And the other one that I had, and I wasn't sure what the origin of this one was, but I think someone was asking you for advice, and your words of advice were strong like bull, cool like cucumber, which is something you've clearly lived by.
There's certain motivational metaphors that I use to just keep me focused. And in the case of Indy, you know, a lot of men died trying to be in that event. They gave their life. And that is part of the legend of the Indianapolis 500. And, you know, some days you have to, if you feel like you're not have the right mindset, you got to remind yourself, you got to have the right mind. You got to tell yourself, all right, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you've got to be. And James will be in Indy. He'll be running the 500, and he'll get that right away. He'll say, yep, strong like bull, cool like
that. I'm gonna use that. I never heard it. And now that you said it, that one didn't dawn on me. Yeah, that's awesome. That's what it's about. You know, that's all the top sports people, no matter what industry it is, they're strong and very calm and collected, and don't lose their train of thought.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we'll be following your career, James, as it progresses, and no doubt when you win the Indy 500, we'll get the exclusive interview here and Off the Ball, no doubt, at some point. Look, it's been great speaking to you both. You've been listening, if you're just tuning in now, to the Saturday panel, an Indy racing special with Willy T Ribbs, motorsport legend, and really you should watch that documentary on Netflix as well that we've been talking about, Uppity, the Willy T Ribbs story. It's a really exceptional watch, I have to say. And James Rowe, the voice you've heard there as well, Kildare driver, just finished his rookie season in the Indy Pro 2000, and as we've said, won the season-ending race in Mid-Ohio. So it's a Saturday panel. You can listen back, no doubt, to the podcast as well on the OTB Sports app, which you can download for free in the App Store, Play Store. That'll be up there very shortly. And watch the full thing back as well on youtube.com/Off the Ball. But Willie, James, it's been really, really good fun chatting to you both this afternoon. So thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, Shane.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
What does the future of our energy landscape look like? This weekend on News Talk, together with ESB Networks, we're